everyone, welcome to the APPIC Video Series. Today I have three guests who are all doctoral candidates in school psychology programs, and they've all just finished the APPIC process and are transitioning into their internships. So I want to have them introduce themselves to you now.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Campbell, and I'm a fifth year, transitioning to my sixth year, doctoral candidate at UW-Madison. And my internship will be at the East Family Guidance Center in Hilo, Hawaii. It's a community mental health center.
Hi, this is Dieu. I'm also similar to all my colleagues here. I am transitioning to my sixth year and starting internship very soon with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We'll be at the autism track. Yes, and I also from the University of Houston in the school psych program.
Yes, so all of us are in sort of the same timeline. My name is Adrianna Crossing, and I am a rising sixth year doctoral candidate in the PhD school psych program there. And I will soon be starting my internship at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School in the child clinical track.
So the three of them are going to be sharing their experiences going through the APPIC process to kind of help demystify that experience for future applicants. Welcome back to the second APPIC video series. Today we're going to be talking about standing out as a school psychology student within the APPIC process. So as you probably could tell from the last video, all three of our panelists here are school psychology students, and while a lot of their insight can be generalized, there is a slight difference when you're applying to these internships as a school psychology student. So they're just going to talk a little bit about their experiences in this video. So kind of broadly, what has been your experience applying to the APPIC process as a school psychology student?
It's been very two-sided for me. So on one hand, it's made me realize how many incredible skills we learn and expertises we were exposed to and have access to. And just the coolest, like Dieu was mentioning in the last video, like systemically, how to think systemically about things is really important. We also have a field that's kind of really, right now at least, is making the turn towards being more applied social justice. I think that's an incredible strength. At the same time, there is a bias, and I think that's just something to be aware of that I don't think I was really prepared for when I started the process of application. Health service psychology is counseling, clinical, and school psychology. And many of these sites, the non-school sites, especially like Adrianna and Dieu Hospital, I'm in community mental health. Usually the majority of people at those types of sites tend to be clinical, or in community mental health, it might be counseling. So, we might seem like, oh, what are you doing? You're not in a school. But we have so many skills and expertises to bring to the table that as a school psych applicant, you have a lot of latitude on where to kind of put yourself or where to kind of like aim yourself for your future goals and directions, which is very exciting. And so I think there's this like part of it, and like you have to sell that a little bit, and it feels like grimy, right? It feels a little gross to have to be like brag on yourself or whatever, but it's important to be able to figure out how to talk about those awesome things you bring to the table, especially with the well-roundedness of our field and how it's really interdisciplinary and how that's a huge strength, being able to kind of bridge the gap between community, family, schools, professionals, and heady science. That's a really big deal. And so really bringing that to the fore is important, especially for sites that haven't really had a lot of school psychologists. A lot of times that might be a bit of more of a risk if they haven't ever had a school psych student. But that doesn't mean that they're not open to it. It means that you should probably do a little bit of investigating about whether or not they are open to it. But part of that is really that selling, that bragging on yourself without, being mean about it. You can definitely highlight all of this great strengths you bring, while also being kind of aware you might face a little pushback from particular individuals. So part of what you can find on the APPIC directory when the information is correctly filled out, and not every site is going to have necessarily up-to-date information, so you might have to reach out and ask for that. But all sites do keep data on who they, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but like who they invited to the interview and who they actually gave spots to in terms of what background they came from. So you can see on there, have students been getting interviews that are from school psychology in the last like 3 to 5 years? That's a pretty good piece of information just to keep in mind. It shouldn't deter you completely, but I would definitely feel a little safer, you know, applying to and interviewing at a place that has before had school psychology students. And so that's just something to make note of, I think, like looking at that history. If you're not sure about whether or not they take it or if it's a newer site or something, 100% recommend reach out as soon as you can and just ask the clinical director. That was an experience that actually Dieu and I were like pretty excited about this site. We were like, yes, we want to apply here. It fits everything we want to do. It's such a good match. It didn't explicitly say in their materials anything about school psychology. So we had to email and clarify. And the one was like, sorry, we only take people from combined counseling school programs or combined clinical school or whatever. So I was like, oh, great to know. Saved me the $70 or whatever it was to apply there, and a lot of time. So definitely find that out. Don't wonder. That's information you can find out.
Absolutely. I was also excited about a site like that, and actually know someone who's a phenomenal scholar who was from a school and clinical program that got an interview. And I was just like, have fun, sounds great. But you know, some places just have their very particular things that they're looking for, and they're not as flexible around that. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about how you're going to present yourself as a school psych student in your application materials. But before I say that, I just wanted to say I got an interview at a place that hadn't had any school psych students in the last 3 years out of like, I think 40-ish students. I got interviewed at a place that 1/3 of their students out of a lot of students were school psych students. And I got a place where 80 to 90% of their students are school psych students. So it's all about how you sell your application. There's no like tried and true way to guarantee that you know, that them previously having school psych students is going to be your way in. So up in the air. So here's what I want to say. In your written materials, you might want to say, you know, I am a health service psychology student with a school and educational emphasis. You don't have to write that. They know. They see what program you're coming from. They see your CV. They know who you're, you know, they know. And so that's one thing that a great advice that I got from a mentor is, just in case they're one of those sites with a bias, don't mention it over and over and over again. Like, you don't have to explicitly say that in your cover letter or your essay. They're going to know it from other places in your application. And then another thing that I did, like I mentioned in the last video, I saw a lot of additional clinical experiences outside of my program. And so for my non-school sites, I didn't even write about my school practica in my cover letter. I said, in addition to my rich school-based practicum experiences, I sought additional clinical work, and then I elaborated on those. Because I knew that's what they wanted to see. Like, they knew that I was in schools, but like they probably wanted to see, well, what sets you apart from other school students that makes you competitive with these clinical and counseling students. And that served me pretty well. I think I got a really good set of interviews that I'm very proud of. So that's sort of one thing. But you know, do what feels right for you. I had like 4 separate non-school based clinical experiences, so I could fill up a paragraph. So just think about what fits for your resume. And then another thing I wanted to speak to is, you know, there's a question that my DCT and other professors at my school were doing or asking me during practice interviews, which is, you've never worked in a hospital. Why do you think you, a school psych student, can make it here at a large academic medical center? And basically, like, it's schools are systems. Hospitals are systems. Like, school psych students are trained so well in systems level work, just like Dieu mentioned in our first video. That bird's eye view, understanding how all these things fit together, how to communicate across departments, how to communicate like in a meeting, how do you make your point really land with someone from a completely different field as you, so you all can still reach the right conclusion to best serve that child or family? That is a transferable skill that's going to work pretty much anywhere. So don't forget that as a school psych student, you have that incredible systems level bird's eye view and ability to navigate in that way that can be applied in pretty much any setting, you know, but if you're going for hospitals like I did, I definitely made that case. I was like, schools are like hospitals, you know, and you just kind of practice it until it sounds natural.
I think similarly with like community mental health or other, if you're looking for juvenile justice or something, there's so much overlap in terms of maybe why you came into that field and why you care. And for a lot of sites, that's what they're looking for. You know, they get so many qualified applicants, right? They're not trying to get the best most meritable person or whatever. They want a person who's a good fit and who fits their mission. And so if your drive is to, you know, help particular kids and families do X, and you can do that in a school, you can do that in a hospital, you can do that in a community setting, you really want to kind of get to that, your purpose and what drives you and how that connects to that site. Because you might feel intimidated looking at some of these sites and being like, I've never set foot in a hospital, like in any kind of practice capacity. But that doesn't mean you couldn't work in primary care or you couldn't work in like outpatient services or something. It just means that's an experience you can seek, and that's something you can try to say you're looking for internship.
Yeah, I was going to add similarly, you know, that it's so unique for us to train as school psychologists is that we know a lot about the system and the rules and the laws that are going on within education, and that's what sets us apart as school psychologists. A lot of time, you know, even though we're going to work in a community-based setting or hospital-based setting, we are still serving family, we are still serving children, students, right? So then whatever we do, we have to thinking back that most of the time that this child and the family do have to interface and interact with the school system. And what we get to have that experience, you know, year to year within that school setting is going to set us apart. In fact, I'm going to highlight compared to other disciplines that we have been at least 2 years in a school setting, understanding how people functions, how rules are applied, and how we as other entities in the community, hospital community-based, can amplify that well-being, that experience of a child within the school setting. That's what's going to set us apart. That's the story that we might want to highlight during, you know, our application, essays, cover letter, and especially during the interviews. That is how we work. Because like Adrianna was saying, like we have this bird eye view in viewing how various systems working together to serve that family and child, and how we can see how people talk, behave in the school setting as well as other within our, you know, like our setting. That's the skills that not that many other disciplines actually focus on and talk about or have that actual practical experience to have. But we get that because, like, you know, we work in a school. I learned this from my advisor, and she said that if you can survive in the school, you can survive anywhere. And that's us. 2 years in the school setting, we survived that. So wherever we go, being able to work in the school setting, that's what sets us apart already. And then we got to highlight that system level thinking, interdisciplinary training, how to just collaborate and talk with various stakeholders, including families. Sometimes we forget about families, a very important stakeholder of the child's well-being. So we got to have to like figure that and bring that into our story, and how we can listen and really amplify those needs in the family and the students and the teachers and other professionals. That's us. That's school psychologists. That's what we do, and that's the story that we got to highlight in everything that, you know, we have to interface with the sites.
Sorry, I'm smiling because there was like I think a Facebook profile picture frame this last year for School Psych Awareness Week, and it was just school psychologists. It's what we do, and I'm just smiling because that's so perfect, but it's so true. Yeah. Like we do so much. And one thing I was joking with one of the interviewers at my current site, actually, I was like, how many therapists do you know can also nail an algebra intervention, a sequencing and segmenting intervention? I'm going to teach your kid how to read. We're going to do some study skills, and also we're going to process that, you know, trauma from before they were adopted or whatever it is. So a broad set of skills. Mm-hmm. Our programs put us through our paces. We have so many incredible courses, so many incredible mm-hmm. experiences. We learn how to do so many different things. And I just, wow, are we the best applicants for APPIC?
Maybe
is that what I'm hearing? It's all on. Hey, I didn't say it. It was all of us.
Yeah, and I think it's just so important to highlight and remember and celebrate those things within, like, I like how we're all able to phrase it in a very growth mindset way, where you might not always feel like that at every point in the APPIC process. I'm just going to be honest. There are some dark times and that level of stress while you're doing your dissertation, whatever it is you're trying to like get done at the same time. It can feel really discouraging to get an email from someone who's like, we don't even consider school psychology. That's a bummer. That's really discouraging. So just remembering to like chat with people, like remember why you do this. And if this isn't what you love doing, maybe that's another thing to reflect on, right? Like there are so many varieties of things you can do with a school psychology training or background. So it's at one point selling it, and the other one is like being ready to defend it a little bit, right? Like kind of having to come prepared to defend that, knowing that people don't understand our field very well, honestly, since it's so different in every state and every individual school building is different. Psychology, umbrella psychology, doesn't necessarily have a great understanding of like what exactly can school psychologists do, and it's your job to like educate them on that a little bit if they're not sure.
True. Yeah, I was going to add to you is that I think that it's so important to think back to your various experience in your site and really highlight how those experiences may be a good fit to the site that you're applying for, and bring those stories together. Like Steph is saying, not only that we have to highlight it, but we have to defend it. And because like if we get this practical experience, that means we do have the experience and we can talk about it, and our skills are applicable to that site. And now we can bring that skill to your site when we got to the interview. So just remember that. And also like sometimes I feel like there are sites that's at two sites I really like, but also like did not take school psychology or psychologists, and I was like,
I know the two.
Yeah, I was like, oh god. And they're amazing, they're perfect. But there are also many amazing sites like MGH, CHOP, and like the Hawaii sites and stuff. They really like to have school psychology. So
Kennedy Krieger loves the school psych student, and they take 33 people a year. So you should apply, whoever you are watching this.
Yeah, there's so many other amazing sites out there. Just love who we are. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to detour us onto my own agenda. So
I was just going to say, I love how Dieu was framing this. I love how Dieu was saying it as a story, the story you want to tell. And I think that's honestly something that I don't want to speak for school psychology overall, but just given the interpersonal kind of like kid-friendly, like cohesive things we do, not only in IEPs or just like psychodiagnostic assessment or whatever, we have to weave together a story to make something make sense. And I think doing that in your application is going to make you stand out, right? Instead of when they say, and they will inevitably ask this in interviews, tell me about yourself. And it's like, what a question, right? And some people might list off, I go here, I used to go here, I do this research. But what's more compelling is to tell your story and to give a little bit more of like connecting those dots of how you got here. That's more compelling to them, both on written application and out loud, in terms of like what makes you as an applicant stand out and make you seem like a person they want to get to know and they want to hire.
Yeah, just amazing, exactly. And one thing I will say for both of your applications, so one thing I don't think we've mentioned yet is, yes, the three of us are all featured in this video, but we're all very close friends and went through this process together. I don't know how many days I would have like prac from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then take a break, and then we were doing APPIC applications on Zoom together from like 9 to midnight, right? And like looking over each other's, usually later. I was trying to make it seem like we pretend to have work-life balance, usually later. And through all of that, one thing I specifically loved about both Stephanie and Dieu's cover letters, but also essays, is it was so storied. And I did a lot of bouncing mine back and forth and got feedback from a lot of people that wanted a bit more of a formulaic approach. But I remember getting to it, and then I was like, these ladies know how to tell a story. And they both did very well with interviews, just saying. So definitely shout out for the story approach. It's so powerful. I wanted to touch on two things. So this is specifically any health service psychologist with a child focus. We know this is true. Sorry, adult clinicians, but it's a little easier to go from being pediatrics trained and transfer that to young adult population than it is to work with adults and translate that down. And that's because through our training, as we learn all the different like psychoeducational principles and CBT and all the different psychodynamic things that we might learn, We also learn how to developmentally appropriately deliver that for pre-metacognition babies, so like younger than 8 or 9, kids between 8 and 9 in middle school, and secondary. So you have to be able to deliver all of those different interventions to specific age groups so that it actually reaches the child, provide the parent training, help it all click, and meet those outcome goals for whatever psychotherapeutic or behavioral intervention you're doing. And of course, the way we originally learned those concepts is adult to adult, right? From reading a textbook or having that delivered to us. So we can then go and deliver that sort of like, you know, I keep doing this, but like, horizontal or whatever, right, to another adult, and then also to kids. So I was like pointing in front of your face, I'm sorry. And so we're peds trained, but like also get some late adolescent work, get some young adult work, and tell your sites, I feel confident that I can work with folks, you know, like 16 to 25 because I've done it before. So don't sell yourself short and seek those opportunities pre-internship to see if you like it. But that's just another argument that we can make. Like school psychology is the only one of the three that has a pediatric focus, but that doesn't mean we can only do pediatrics. Shoot, in my internship, I have an adult rotation. Everybody wish me luck. And I've had adult clients, and you've done parent management training and those sorts of things. It's all transferable. You just gotta like have some faith in yourself that you can really do it.
Yeah.
The second thing that I want to touch on, just in this little spiel, I'm sure I'll talk again before we're done. I'm like our little group's like assessment nerd. I love assessment. I really enjoy neuropsych assessment. I really enjoy culturally responsive and decolonial diagnostic and assessment processes. So if you're doing any sort of side growth to make yourself really stand out, like definitely do that. But specifically related to school psychology and assessment, we have a lot of assessment training. You have so much assessment training. There are plenty of programs out there that do not get the same amount. And so don't sell yourself short in that way. I thought the most interesting thing about my interviews, which were at 5 clinical tracks or 5 clinical sites and 1 school site, is almost everyone was like, oh gosh, you just have so much assessment training. I had twice as many intervention hours as I did assessment hours. And that's still, they were like, whoa, we get a lot of hours. And even though I didn't see that as the biggest focus of my application, they still saw just that flat number and saw that I was a school psych student, and they knew I knew what I was doing. So even if assessment isn't your focus, for some sites, they want to see a certain number or a certain amount of experience, a certain number of integrated reports, and you'll learn about that as you dig into your APPIC information. So remember what you have that sets you apart. And I would say our PEDS focus and assessment are 2 things that school psychs bring to the table that not every program or specialty can.
And also interdisciplinary training.
Yes.
Yes, we are very uniquely trained to collaborate with others very well.
Yes.
Lifespan too, right?
Lifespan. Oh gosh, I mean, think about any multidisciplinary evaluation team. You're working with general ed teachers, special ed teachers, administrators, social work, speech and language pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy.
Yes, and having to explain our work to like
all of those people.
And then the children and the parents and the professional from like different fields.
Yeah.
We are just so uniquely trained to be.
Wow. Am I reaching that same conclusion where we're awesome and maybe the best applicants? We just did.
I'd be getting there. So one thing, and this is probably definitely the case for a minority of school psych students, but I was in a position in grad school where my assistantship led me to have a lot of hours working with adults. So just to give a little context, I was a student supervisor for our training clinic, but on the side that tests college students. So my clients were 17 to 65 for 2 years. And I supervised people as they did those cases with adults. So I felt nervous going in. I was like, shoot, like this was a great supervision experience. I'm so glad to have that assessment stuff behind me. But I was worried because I had 2 years that took a lot of time with adults and not very much time with kids. But I was able, like, as the same way that you can like sell your kind of pediatric knowledge in that growth lifespan way, you can also sell experiences with adults. Like that was important for me to get this diagnostic experience and do a lot of stuff with ADHD. And it was important. It was even more important for me to realize that I love supervision and get to practice that with other students. And so being able to like to spin, I guess, that 2-year assistantship that I thought might be a detriment was actually a really cool opportunity. And another way to say, hey, I'm kind of lacking in kid hours recently. I would like to get more kid hours. That's another kind of like deficit turned like growth area you can talk about in your interviews and stuff.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I know someone who is still kind of early in my program, I think about these things all the time. So thank you so much for sharing what it was like as a school psychology student. Oh, that's my cat. Yeah, he's just going to be in the video. But thank you so much, and look out for the video next week. Bye.